Julie, welcome to the Nifty Travel Podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, you're most welcome. And one of the things I always like to ask my guests is well, what is your earliest memories of travel?
I was 4 and my parents decided to take me to Canada. I'm French, by the way, but my parents decided to take me to Montreal to see my aunts, who's been living in Canada forever. She has the double nationality. And one of my earliest memory was me sitting on the top of my dad, who was playing the sledge for me on an ice slide. And I remember this very, very well, especially because I asked him to, do that so many times, and his his trousers ripped off at some point. So I must say it's probably my first memory of travel, big travel. But I have a family who's been, traveling on the roads of France since my earliest age because my two parents were bikers, motorcycle drivers. So lots of travel around.
Oh, so no, no hinting then. Travel was very much part of your early life then.
Yes, I mean, not sleeping at home was not something I remember when I was 10 or so, having friends telling me they've never slept outside of their bed, which for me was like, what do you mean? We were basically camping and sleeping in trucks or in small hotels or in hosts at host or at friends' place. I was literally sleeping over at my friends many times a month. So for me, the bed, as long as I can sleep, I don't care where it is. So yeah, we were traveling a lot, definitely.
So, well, tell me about um, life growing up in France then.
So I am originated from Bordeaux. I was born in the city of wine, and I was, already a kid that liked to talk. Especially, I really loved to engage with adults. I found kids my age quite boring. I always liked, some deep talk about life and experience and what people think and what they felt and so on. And my mother was like so scared that I couldn't really engage with people my age. They were boring, only talking about, I don't know, Barbies and like, I don't know, trucks and stuff. It was just not interesting at all for me. So yeah, I just really enjoyed being around people and talk with them or being listened to, actually. And yeah, I was lucky enough to be in a family that was very open to change and new things, not money wise, but culturally wise. So my mother would take us to arts exhibitions. She really encouraged us to create. She really encouraged us to talk different languages. My father was like a builder. He would build anything from his bare hands. He would buy motorcycle parts and just build motorcycle out of parts he basically assembled. And we were doing a lot of camping, so lots of like outdoor skills, making fire without matches and kind of stuff. So I would say I was very, very lucky to be an environment where it was good to be a kid. Yeah. So growing up and nowadays, I think it really shows in my personality because I just like to try new things. I like new environments. I like being outside, meeting people, which I think is probably the most important things related to travel, isn't it?
Oh, well, certainly being curious is a very important element, isn't it? I think it's
Yeah.
um, yeah. Why travel unless you have some curiosity? So it sounds like your parents they they moved with their work, with their activity, and that was kind
Oh,
of
not at all. It was their hobby. So they had very boring job, what we could call right now bullshit jobs, maybe. But they had a lot of hobbies, and they would take us along. That I think whether we were here or not, the hobby would have been the same. They didn't adapt light for us. They let us come along into their adult life. So they will go on, driving sessions with their friends on motorcycle, and so I remember, like, hopping behind my mom or dad at a very, very young age. And my dad also had a few different motorcycles as well as sidecars. So, like Wallace and Gromit, who would just go along on the sidecars. And just, yeah, yes, on Saturday and Sunday, it would be very rare if we were home. Same for vacations. Same for summer vacations. I would go on summer camp with the Boy Scouts, which was not Scouts, but the French mixed gender stuff we call Éclaireurs de France, which is quite the Boy Scouts, but without the Catholic meaning and, with religious side to it. So yeah, my parents do not travel at all for their work, but their hobby was not traveling in the wide way of taking the plane and going somewhere far. It was going to see their friends, going to some meetups, to some, events and stuff that would occur in I would guess, a radius of like 200 kilometers around Bordeaux. So it was a lot of travel, but like local travel.
yeah. I was when I was in Thailand a few years ago. Um, I was fascinated by the number of people who travel by motorbike or mopeds, and I guess I wanted to find out whether it was a little bit similar in the sense I you could see whole families traveling together by motorbikes and mopeds. Was it a little
Yeah,
bit?
yeah. My fathers and my mother, they had their own motorcycles, and as soon as I reached 14, I had my own, and then just um, going up in terms of cylinder. So took all the licenses that you could get at the ages I could get them. Uh, and then yes, all their friends were also riders. So it was not really, it was always to go somewhere to meet people. So bicycles, motorcycles would be the mean to get there and meet people. It was always There was always something at the end of the road that would motivate the road. And I realized that even as an adult right now in Japan, I don't move if there is nobody waiting me at the end of the track. So I love using SNS as a mean to meet people online in various region of Japan. And then once I have sort of a start of a friendship with that person, then I'll travel there and I'll let that person guiding me around to discover the place through their eyes. But I will enjoy the route to get there because I'm going to see someone. If it's only just a place with no one there, it's very difficult for me to go out of my home if nobody's waiting for me.
It sounds like you grew up in a very social environment. So
Definitely.
so obviously things must have changed significantly then when you had your own motorbike. Did you feel a great sense of independence? How did it change things for you?
Uh I had my first motorcycle. I was 14. That's the legal age where you can get a moped in France. And that because I had a lot of like extracurricular activities, like I was horse riding and then singing in the chorus and attending role playing game events with my friends. I used to be a huge D&D player, but this changed. I mean, I used to do this by bicycle as much as I could before I had an engine, right? So it just gave me the opportunity to move without my mother having to taxi me everywhere. Because she was also very busy and she always, drove us everywhere. But I felt this way, I can just do whatever I want. It was just before the smartphones arrived on the market. So I had no smartphone. So I'm sure you'll remember that time where you will just stay saying, I'm going there. That will be a phone you can reach to me if there's anything, and I'll be back at that time. And you just have to, be back at the time. Otherwise, people are freaking out. But other than that, no news, good news type of thing. So yes, I would say it was freedom, but not only it was very classy because I was the only one in the whole school to have my own motorcycle. So I was known as the girl with the motorcycle, and obviously that helps making friends.
Yeah, absolutely it does. How did the how did your interest in the outside world come to you? Enjoy reading books, stories from other people. How did it come about?
Yeah, I'm a big, big reader, but I usually read fantasy, fantastic fantasy, heroic fantasy. So I am definitely interested in the different civilizations and everything that you can find on those books. Because reading fantasy, usually there's a map at the beginning of a book, and you'll meet different folks and you'll meet different culture throughout the book, which is mostly, the characters have to travel and adapt to where they go, where they end up in. So I have never thought about that. I've never made the parallel. I have never made the parallel between reading fantasy and liking travel. Thank you for making me realizing that. Um, but yeah, I like adaptation. I like to meet people who think differently. I don't think there's only one way to see things. I like how experience can change so much two different two people who have otherwise grown together, and how different people can live the same experience and feel so different about it. So I think that's what motivates me into travel, is to understand the always other points of view, not to change mine, but just to nuance everything. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that the most fascinating thing about meeting people who go to the same destination, but they sometimes you get a completely different picture of the same place.
Yes.
You think,
Yes.
did you go to the same place as me?
Yes, exactly. I felt that I was in Osaka 2 days ago because I've never really liked Osaka. It was noisy and dirty, and I was like, there must be much more to it that I just didn't realize. So I decided to go there and call all the friends that I had around, so they all show me a place that they like. And through their eyes, I discovered a completely different city. Okay, it's still dirty and noisy, and there's still a few places that I don't like, but I also found some other things that I had no access prior to meeting those people, that made me think, okay, I kind of see, I kind of understand why some people would love to live here. It's not for me, but now I can just, share their point of view and understand why it's good for them. But I was happy to go back to my like country town in Nagoya.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to you discovering different countries through books is and looking at maps, is that the place where Japan first got onto your radar, or did that come?
No, I mean, I was born in 1990, and when I was around 10, it was the Pokemon boom in Europe, and I just dived right in. After that, we had all the Ghibli movies appearing on screen at the cinemas in French, and just this, like the whole package of all the sceneries and the way people were interacting to each other, and the language really really shook me. And at that time I was already learning English as a second language, is in a reinforced English class, because I have good ears. That's also why I used to sing and stuff. um, and I also had German as a third language. And at that time, I told my mother I wanted to learn Japanese, and she said yes. So I started Japanese as a fourth language. Um, and it was just, I like the sound of it. I think that, I mean, I like the Japanese culture that I see, I saw through animes and stuff. Um, but then I heard Japanese and I just liked the hear of it so much. Also, I was very, very concerned about being a class person, like a very cool kid. So all of my friends were also diving into the Japanese world, and I thought, okay, if I speak Japanese, I will be very cool. I will look very cool. And so I just started like this, and I just never stopped, actually. So I came through Japanese culture around, yes, my teenage years, as a lot of other people, a lot of other young people in Europe at that time. We were part of the second wave of Japanese cultural shock. The first one was, in the 80s with people watching kung fu and karate and, the movies about martial arts. And we were the second wave that was about all animes and pop culture and first like idols and stuff. And I just went further than the others, I'd say. I was just a little bit more maniac than my friends.
So I suppose all that immersion in Japanese culture then naturally led to you wanting to go and visit.
Yes,
How did that come about?
I I think I didn't really think about going to Japan until I was 16 or so, because for me it was like too big of a dream. It was very expensive and such. But then, growing up, you figure out that I used to be, I am a collector. So I used to earn my money since a very young age, and I never, never, never used it for anything. So when I reached 20, I was at that time studying bookbinding in Paris. I'm a bookbinder, actually. Um, and I had been studying Japanese aside from my studies all that time. So in Paris, living in Paris, I started to meet a lot of Japanese based in France. And despite living in Paris, I actually, in my head, was already in Japan. I mean, I was studying for bookbinding, but outside of this, all the rest of the hours were either watching Japanese TV dramas on my very first computer with Wi Fi access, or just hanging around in the Japanese town of Paris and hanging out with Japanese people living in Paris and leaving and I was cooking Japanese at home and I was listening to Japanese music. I was completely otaku, like we says, completely maniac about Japanese culture. So I spent 3 years in Paris, but when I arrived in Japan, it was like I was there already for a long time. And in my studies, I had a training, an internship to do. And thanks to a few contacts and networking that I have started, thanks to all those Japanese friends, I was able to find an internship at the Tokyo National Library in the Japanese binding uh, side of the library, which just was the beginning of the end, I would say.
Well, well, the end of the beginning, perhaps.
Yes, the end of the beginning. Yes, for sure.
So all these lovely people you met in Paris. Well, I suppose Paris is an international city, so uh, like all international cities, you get to meet the whole world. So your new Japanese friends, you were so into Japan, did you make them feel homesick?
I don't think so. Some might have taken some distance from me because they were more interested in the French side, And I think I really, really, really was a maniac. So I would not be surprised if someone told me now, like you were scary. Yeah, it would totally understand this. But for me, it was an access that was to Japanese culture, to people, to test my Japanese skills, to learn language and stuff that was very, very important. Um, so I don't think I made them homesick, but I would totally agree if maybe tells me that they took distance from me, because they were living their French dream. So
Yeah, exactly. So there you were. You took a an internship in Tokyo. Then, um,
yes,
was your first experience of
it felt
Japan?
like walking in a Ghibli movie. I know that Japanese people, when they come to France, they say, from Paris, that it feels like walking in Amélie's movie, Amélie Poulain. And for me, it was exactly the same. I would recognize everything despite never having seen them in real. Because I've seen them in so many movies and animes and TV series and so on. It felt like recognizing everything, and I felt really at peace. But the thing is, um, I am a loud person. I am very expensive, very extrovert, and I always thought Japan might not be for me, because we do have in France and other outside of in the world, this image of Japan being very strict, and not you should not be different from the crowds and so on and so on. So I was expecting to be displeased with what Japan was for real. I was very afraid of having that ideal, um, that would be so different from reality, that I went to Japan to test this, to confront my ideal, my dream, to what reality was. I was like, there's no way it's gonna be, like pink. It's like wearing pink glasses all the time. Japan, living in Japan must be tough. It probably is not as easy and wonderful as you think. So just go there and try. And it was actually better than I thought. And after 2 months there, I was like, I don't want to go back. At that time I had a boyfriend, which I was really really in love in France. We've been together for 2 years, but even this could not stop me from wanting to go back to Japan, and I know he couldn't follow me. But then after that, all my work, all my efforts, all my energy was spent towards the goal of going back to Japan. So I
So,
spent 2 months in Tokyo at first,
mhm.
and after that, for until the end of my bookbinding studies, I had another internship to do. I couldn't go back to Japan again, but I found a training place, two training places in London, actually, two different places. The first one was a bookbinding studio called the Wyvern, and it's still, I think it's in London, and not far from Buckingham Palace. They are uh, the studio behind the creation of Harry Potter's monstrous book of monsters you can see in the movies and stuff. So it was really fun, and surprisingly, there was a lot of Japanese workers in that shop. So I continued speaking Japanese instead of English
Oh
in
wow.
London. And the second one was at Studio Fi, which is artistic bookbinding studio that is the studio of someone called Mark Kokram. And his wife is Japanese. And he actually came to our school in France for a workshop, and his wife was with him. And I discussed a lot with her. And she liked me very much. And that's why he accepts my internship uh, a request when I asked, because his wife liked me. And he could talk about Japan again, because he was also a Japanese fan, a Japan fan. So anything I did, and after that, taking again studies and stuff, it was always Japan centered, to the point that I think my friends must have really, really heard the word Japan too much. I think that's probably the word I've said the most in my whole life.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Now there are many busy cities in the world. I've not personally been to Tokyo, but I've been to Hong Kong, and that shook my entire view of what a busy. I thought London was a busy city, but after,
No, it's cute. London's cute.
yeah, London is just like a little village compared with Hong Kong. So, um, does Tokyo have a similar impact? You know, how busy
It
is?
really depends on the areas, I'd say. At that time, because I was working the whole week, and I would go back home very tired of the whole cultural stuff and all the language and stuff. And I was very young. I was only 20, and in Japan, that's the legal age. So my home family would not let me go out after work and stuff. So I did not really go out in Tokyo at that time, maybe 2 or 3 days only. But it felt really busy and I felt very lost because it was so wide. I remember missing the trains or like getting lost in stations so many times, ending up in tears, not even. I was speaking enough Japanese, but sometimes it was not enough to, ask the train master where I wanted to go and how I wanted to go. And I remember getting lost so many times because at that time in Tokyo Metro, there was not English everywhere and I had no smartphone. So it was all a matter of like, can you communicate and survive or nothing? It was in 2010. So it would really depend on the lines. I said the Yamanote line, which is the green line that circles around Tokyo, probably would have English, though I don't really remember. But all the local trains, all the local stations, there was nothing. And it was true adventure, I would say. It was true adventure, but it was a little overwhelming for me. Bordeaux is not such a big city, but I come from the suburbs of Bordeaux, and I would not at that time hang out so much. And even in Paris, I was so concentrated on my screen that I didn't really go out in Paris and explore it because I didn't have so much money to do so. So Tokyo at that time, I don't have much of an impression from it, despite being very busy and having a very complicated train system. But nowadays, even nowadays, when I go to Tokyo, I feel very overwhelmed in the biggest areas. Though I have recently started to discover all the suburbs of Tokyo because Tokyo is so big. It's actually so many small towns that are just connected together because there's no countryside in between. They just grew. It's small towns all around Tokyo that just grew up. So that everyone touches each other, and that's why it makes us such a big city. But all of them have a different culture, have a different way of life, if you can say. And so I have discovered smaller towns outside of Tokyo that are not touristic, but are mostly bed towns, and I love those because I love the whole life is lifing type of feeling. People are living there. So it's very practical, very simple houses, small buildings, small shops. It's not commercial area. It's really, and I like this feeling of this is where people feel safe kind of stuff. The whole bedding area usually are very quiet and you can see how people live. What do they buy in the supermarket? Where's the coin laundry? What do they have on the balcony? Where do they take a coffee in the morning? That's what I'm interested in when I'm traveling. Not really, I'm not really interested in landmarks at all. Actually, I was in Osaka this week, and a friend of mine wanted to show me one of the biggest landmarks. And when I saw how many people were in front of them, I thought, "There's a park there. I'm going to wait for you there. Have fun." And I lived my best life sitting in the park for 1 hour, just breathing the air. So landmarks not really something I'm interested in too. However, daily lifestyle is something that I like. And to feel that in Tokyo, you really have to go outside of the busy areas. But then if you go outside of these areas, it looks quite cool actually. If you go to Harajuku's outside area or Sugamo in the north outside area and so on, I sometimes think I could live there. I probably would never go to Harajuku or Asakusa whatsoever, but I could live in those small town. They're a little bit old. It feels like, the 80s just stopped. And you still have the small bath, the local public bath, and the small, people selling vegetables and yeah. So Tokyo, if you go inside Tokyo, the whole business area can feel really overwhelming. At least for me, it is. I know a lot of my friends living there love the idea of being a part of something bigger. and being so small in such a big place that they can be, invisible and just live their life in the crowd, being invisible. For me, it creates anxiety. I like being known. I like knowing all my the people around where I live. I like to have meaningful interactions on the daily life with the grocery clerk, or the boulanger, the bread maker, and so on. For me, those small interactions are so everything, and I really don't like when I'm invisible. That's something that's really, really scary for me. So Tokyo is definitely not my cup of tea.
But in a sense, I think the only major city I've ever visited a lot is London, and
Mm.
you get a feeling that uh, well, the areas are all different sizes and shapes, but if you go through them enough times, it sounds a little bit like how you discovered in Tokyo, that you actually start noticing um, things that are just particular, they're just in those areas, you know.
Yes, in London, I used to live in Ladywell, which is one train. When it's on one line on, it's you take this from the city. So from the city, you have a train going south, and it's you cross the Thames, and then it's like 20 minutes away, and it's a very, very quiet area. Um, it's very, like the small pavilions and like small gardens and green stuff and hipster coffees and stuff. um and I kind of liked there. I used to walk around a lot, and I really enjoyed the area. I also love the whole area between Greenwich, around Greenwich, or when you go a little bit more, I think it was Barton. I don't know. But I also really loved, being able to go outside and go to the Kent for one day, or to go to Margate for one day, or to go to Bath for one day. That was really cool. And if I was to go back and live in England, I'd probably choose something in the Welsh area, because I really loved the culture and how green it was. So for me, green is so important. I think I spent so much time in my childhood being outside, camping, being into the green, that sometimes that's the only thing that grounds me.
Yeah,
So in Tokyo, when you go outside of the city center, there's a lot of parks actually, and that feels good.
yeah. No, it's good to remember, isn't it, that nature and the outdoor life is it's an important connection, isn't it, for us?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it is definitely not for my husband, who complains that there are too many plants in our house, but yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So you'd had your first experience of Japan, and you
Yes.
felt committed after that. But I remember reading something, you were saying that you had kind of itchy feet. So did that kind of mean that you were looking for a new way of getting more experience in the Japanese way of life? Or how was it?
Yes. I mean, after that first experience, which taught me that, like Japan could be good and it might actually suit me better than I thought. I was like, okay, it was 2 months and I was in a homestay and I was in an internship, so very, protected. And I thought, okay, next step is to, go there by myself, find an apartment, find a job, and just try it. And when you're French, you do have access to a special visa. A few countries in the world do have it too. That is called working holiday visa, which is a normally there's difference between the countries, but in Japan at least it's 1 year where you are allowed to either work or travel, or both of them. And the only thing you need to have to get that visa is to prove that you have the intent of going back to your country after 1 year, and that you have enough savings to sustain yourself even if you can't work on the spot. And so I took that visa for 1 year. At first, I had a connection that helped me have like an internship for 3 months. I eventually quit this internship that was not really interesting, and just starting living by myself. I was living in a share house, so like for yeah, with Japanese people, But I started doing a lot of different jobs. I used to work at French restaurants, in the bakery. I started my first job teaching English, even though I was absolutely not English. They wrote Canadian on my resume for the parents to buy my French accent, which my accent in English is absolutely not Canadian, but whatsoever. But then, yes, I started teaching English to kids, do a lot of like babysitting works, working at international events and such. And even despite having a few bad experiences with like unfortunately sexual harassment or power harassment, I never once I thought Japan is bad, I should go back. I thought, okay, I just met the wrong person. Or okay, I was unlucky or I didn't see the signs. But never did I thought, okay, Japan is not the place for me, I should go back. Each time it just strengthened my will for, finding the right place for me, but it had to be in Japan. And after 1 year, when I had to go back home, it was such with despair. It was so hard for me because I didn't want to go back. I really hoped that I could find a work to sponsor a visa and continue living in Japan. Unfortunately for me, the degree of bookbinding that I had did not equal a university degree. And so I didn't have enough study level to get my working visa. And so nothing worked. And I had to go back. And it was my first reversed cultural shock when I came back to France, not willing to go back. Because I quite adapted very well to Japanese way of thinking. Even if I was not agreeing with everything, it just I felt at peace. I felt in the right place to start building my life. And going back to France, I had to go back to studies because that's the easiest way I found to finally be able to live in Japan one day was to go back and enter university. I was 23. It's only 5 years different from the people who enter, after the A level. But it was big because I traveled, I worked, I was independent. I made life choices for myself. So I was very ahead in terms of your way of thinking of doing things from the other people in my class. It was very hard. It was very, very hard. A few months after going back to France, I started being depressed, and I had to start seeing a psychologist because I was deep in depression. I would, yeah, it was very, very hard. And eventually, I just did my best, and I graduated from tourism studies. I finished valedictorian actually. Um, and thanks to that, I was able to enter a license. So it's the third year of university degree. I entered directly in the third year because I had already the level to enter. Finished this, and then I found a job in Japan, and they could sponsor my visa because I had the right level of studies. And I'm in Japan since then, and that was in December 2016. So it was war, but I remember that's probably the thing I was the most determined to get in my life was that visa for Japan. No way I'm gonna give up. But it was hard, yeah. I'm glad I did it, but it was very, very hard.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Um, I think unless you actually experience that feeling, because I think the first time my parents took me away on a holiday somewhere in Europe, and then I went back to England. Somehow, England didn't seem quite the same as it was when I left it, and then
Yep.
I'd only been away for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, but you change so much. Travel, it makes you change so much. It makes you refine your reality again, understanding that what you thought was just normal is not. There's so many other people, and it makes you think so different. It changes you, and I think even 2 days somewhere can change you to the point when you go back to home, you changed, but the thing back there didn't change at all, and they don't even expect you to change. And I think that for me, who's been living in Japan for more than 10 years now, and being practicing learning Japanese for 20 years, which is, somehow in only 2 or 3 years, it will be more than half of my life. Um, there's a lot of things in my personality that I built, my adulthood that I built in Japan that are very Japanese. My clients say so. I still have a therapist here that tells me how Japanese I am in so many of my reactions. And when I come back to France, people can't see it on my face. I'm French. I speak French fluently. Obviously, I'm someone who was born there. But then I stumble when I try to, pay the addition with the euro because I don't know the coins anymore. And I feel so stupid not knowing the coins of my own, country, or apologizing for, being late, or just like, hitting someone in the street and then just, sorry, kind of stuff. I have very Japanese things that I can't change because I use them every day here. My husband's Japanese, my client's Japanese. I live in a Japanese only environment. So it's just part of who I am, but it doesn't show on my skin, on my head. When I speak French, you would never know that my culture is actually half Japanese. Not my, my country, but my culture. So when you go back, it's so frustrating because unless people know me and have followed me for a long time, friends who really know me well, they do understand. But my family, or like when I go to an event, let's say I go to a wedding and I meet friends I haven't seen for such a long time, they watch me like I'm a curious animal. Like, who is she? She's just, weird. Does she play the Japanese person? Like, is she, like, I only know Japan, kind of. But actually, it's real. I'm not playing. I just can't change it anymore. I cannot go back to 100% French person only when I'm in France. It's just I don't. That part doesn't exist anymore. My adult French doesn't exist. I have childhood in French, but adulthood is in Japan. So it's very weird. So I do understand when you say as a child that you only live for a few days or few weeks, and then you go back. You feel different, but nothing else has changed in your everyday life, and it feels there's a gap that is difficult to explain.
Yeah, and I think at that age, you're not really at that point where you're able to describe how you feel. I think I spent the first 10 years just absorbing uh, and just sort of expressing myself that way. Um, no, it's funny, isn't it? How
It
we
is.
you just aware of all this stuff going on around you, and you're
But kids are sponges, right? So they learn a lot faster than we adults do. And remember, I told to you in the very first that my this very first memory of a big travel that was in Canada. And actually, French people who speak French in Canada, they do have a very specific French. That is, they have a very, what we call an accent, but from them, it's always a point of view. But they do have a very specific way of speaking French. You know, uh, you can get from the moment they say hello, that they come from Canada. And after only 10 or 14 days as a kid, I took that accent. And when I came back to France, people were looking at me, what the hell? Like, are you trying to making fun of anything? It's not. I just couldn't control it. And it's the same now when I speak English. You have the British accent, so I kind of like mimic what I hear. But if you were Australian more, or like more, like Scottish, at the end of the interview, I will have the same accent as you, and it's not something you can control.
no, I think that's it's a very natural it's a very natural thing that happens. I think we over time, and we each of us do it in different stages and in different time periods. I think if you stay anywhere long enough, you start picking up you mentioned Australia, you start picking up the lingo, don't you?
Yes, 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 yes. In it.
I had a
Exactly.
sorry, an Argentinian friend who lived in the UK for a long time, and we went on a trip to Spain, and he was saying, "Oh, you can't believe how different."
Spanish,
European
yes. Yeah.
European Spanish to South American Spanish is, it's like night and day. So
Mm.
you talking about Canadian French and European French
Yeah, same.
must
Probably exactly the same differences.
yeah. So going back to Japan then must
Yeah.
felt like going home in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. Every time I come back to Japan, it feels like going home. That's just the scent in the air. It's really different. I know. I mean, for me, it feels like home, but I know it's different because now I'm going to talk about it after. But I'm a guide for foreigners in Japan, and even people who come to Japan for the first time talk to me about those differences in the smell of the air, the smell of the rain. Like the general uh, feeling about what's happening out around that is so different. I think Hong Kong probably has this special feeling as well. I would love to visit Hong Kong. It's not that far from Japan, and I should probably go before China does anything stupid. Sorry, but but yeah, I think Hong Kong might be very different as well. So for me, yes, it feels like going home because now I have a house here, I have a husband, I have 5 cats and a bike and plants. So it really feels like home. And going back to France is not always easy for me because I know that for a few weeks or days I'll have to adapt back to people and culture that is not really mine anymore. That I even if I understand, it doesn't really suit me. Yeah, feels like home, definitely.
Having returned then, you were still finding your way
Yeah.
degree. So, how did you? Because I noticed there were two things you did that were quite similar, both to do with sustainability. So
Oh, yes.
how did how did you find them, or did they find you?
I would say that I was into sustainability before knowing what it was. And that's also thanks to my parents. They would repair anything that was broken. So I think that's also, whether it was bikes or like things around the house or like materials and stuff, they will use things until they were completely useless and unrepairable before buying something else. And for an example, the microwave in my home is 40 years old and it still works like a charm. And they never replace it. It's yellow, but it works perfectly. So why would you replace it, right? My mother's washing machine is like, I don't know how she can still use this because it's really, really, really in bad shape. Like half the buttons still are not working anymore. But it washes, so she uses it. And it's not because we don't have money to pay it. It's just it works. So why would you change it, right? So I was really into this, taking care of the things that you own, as well as my mother would, she was gardening, so producing a lot of vegetables in her garden, and she had this like organic mindset already 20 or 30 years ago. And so for me, taking care of things, taking care of people, having trying to have less impact was already something that was in my everyday life in France. And so when the word sustainable just became popular, I was like, at first I didn't really understand because sustainability for me just looked like the basics. If something's not sustainable, why would you do this? If something is not something you can use for a long time, why would you start using it? And so on. So for me, it was like something that I was already doing in my work in different areas of expertise that I worked on. It was like I used to work in the hotellerie and tourism, and then I used to work in the PR industry, um, and then in the tourism industry. And I think the word sustainable really hit Japan during the pandemic, especially in the tourism field, because they realized that their tourism that was heavily based on outsiders visiting Japan was absolutely not sustainable. So many companies shut down, so many restaurants shut down. Not all, I know it's the same everywhere, right? But in Japan, we had a country lockdown for almost 3 years. For us, Corona really lasted almost 3 years. 3 years with no one being able to go inside the countries except Japanese people. And for us foreigners, it was always this risk. If you leave, you're not guaranteed to be able to go back. Even if you have a visa, even if you have families, even if you have kids. I know a woman, she's from New Zealand, she's married to a Japanese, and they have 3 kids together. And they left, I remember, on the beginning of March 2020. So right at the beginning of the pandemic. And on the 26th, Japan locked his borders. She was stuck with her 3 kids in New Zealand for 6 months. And her husband was in Japan because he has a company. They could not meet each other. The kids have Japanese passport, right? The mother has a New Zealand passport, and she's married, and she's the mother of kids, and she was locked out of Japan for 6 months. And for me, I wanted to go and see my family, but I knew that at some point, if I left, I might not be guaranteed to go back. So it was almost 4 years without seeing my family, and that was very, very hard. But at that time, Japanese people had a lot of time to think, and had a lot of time to see what others around are doing. Japanese people don't usually implement brand new strategies. They like to see what works somewhere, and if it works, and if there's so many examples of it being good, they'll think about it, they eventually make it better, and then implement it. And then the sustainability stuff really, really started to spread during pandemic. But for me, as I told you earlier, it was just something that was so basic that I didn't even think about putting it on my resume or putting it as a title for anything. I was like, if you're not sustainable, you don't want people to know that then. So if you are, you're going to write it. Does that mean that everybody who doesn't write it is not sustainable? Isn't it? That's shameful. But then I realized that when I started to market myself as a sustainability specialist, it made sense for my clients because that was the hot topic at the time. So I eventually write it down and eventually, put words on it and I started making conferences about what sustainable tourism is and what it isn't, what is the sustainable mindset of creating an activity and what it isn't. Because for Japanese, sustainability always is mostly concerns, environment, natural environment. But as you know, sustainability needs to have at least 3 markers, which one being the environment, the second one being the economy, and the third one being the humanity. And if those 3 are combined to work together, then you have something that's sustainable. But if one is missing, if you have something that protects the human and the environment but does not work economically wise, then it's not sustainable. And so on. You need to have those 3, otherwise it's just not sustainable. And when you try a new idea or when you implement a new concept, you need to have been thinking about those 3 stuff. Otherwise, you're just gonna fall, right? It's just not gonna work. For me, it was so logical, but it's not. And my work today is about, trying to find out when I explain to my clients those 3 factors, where they can find it, where they can find them in their own activity, where it does apply, and where they could find ways to improve this for the whole circle to work. So that's my work in Japan, and it mostly related to tourism.
Tourism is still an exploding, uh, uh, industry.
Yeah.
And do you think sustainability as a word is being overused, or
Oh
perhaps
yes. Oh
being
yes, of course.
being
There's a
mis?
lot of greenwashing.
So do you think it needs to be redefined, or is it like someone with a Hoover? We just need to blow away the people who are not saying it right.
I think sustainability is a word that is misused a lot, or at least, used to hide something else. It's like greenwashing. But eventually, people are growing more and more aware of what is sustainable and what is not. You will always have people that don't care about it and just, take my money, I don't care. There will always be people like this. But the thing is, remember, sustainability is about being able to continue. So if you overuse the word and you don't have those three pillars working correctly, then you eventually just fade away and die. You're not sustainable. So I want to believe that people who implement sustainability as a lifestyle, as a mindset, are sustainable. People who hide behind words to try to convince, they probably will not be there next time. But right now, it's maybe the more with the word sustainable or responsible whatsoever. It's gonna be something else in 5 years, in 10 years. It was something else. I mean, remember the eco word? We had eco, like ecotourism, eco whatsoever, eco blah blah blah. It's You will always have people trying to surf on the trends. I think it's a word, French way of saying this, but to surf on the trends using the words that are trendy to, stand up against the concrete. But usually, you know so right now it's sustainability. Okay. Japanese people love the word sustainability, but it also had, right now it's decreasing because so many people used it without nothing behind, without anything behind. Just to say it like I'm sustainable. It's like having people, having this like pin badge of sustainable wheel and then drinking from a water bottle and smoking like tobacco. Is like, I am not going to put that pin. A lot of my clients like, oh, why don't you put that sustainable pin badge on your vest or something? It was like, because the people I see wearing them are not worse wearing it. So if I wear it, am I any different? Like, for me, it's like about what you do, not what you say.
Mm, yeah. Well, in terms of doing, that kind of segues into my next question. Um, Now, I saw an article you wrote about traditional Japanese craftsmanship uh, and putting on, finding people to guide through different environments. So tell me how that came about.
So first, as I told you earlier, I'm a bookbinder. Uh, I used to be a bookbinder because outside of the studies, I unfortunately never did the job. I graduated. I was good at what I was doing, but I realized that what I loved the most in my bookbinding studies was actually discussing with my teachers and discussing with all the bookbinders that I was lucky to cross paths with. Um, and so living in Japan made no difference. I had the chance for in different jobs to meet craftsmen of various fields, and I just loved so much discussing with them because they also had, they always have like a different life path from the Japanese traditional salaryman. They're usually rebels, they don't like to be confronted. They want to do one thing and they don't care if it sells or not. They're going to do this and just don't bother me. I'm in my, workshop and I'm doing what I like and I'm good at this. And just don't bother me with marketing whatsoever. I'm doing this, period. And I really, really enjoyed talking with a few of them that I had the chance to encounter. And yes, I realized that it was exactly the same problem as in France when I was studying bookbinding. Most of the people around me was telling me, there's no work. The industry is closing. Nobody needs this anymore. Why are you studying this? You might be just studying, craft, just arts and crafts instead of craftsmanship, or you might just be studying languages. There might be more work, more job for this. Um, and I remember in France when I decided to study bookbinding, the principal of my school asked me to come in his office and asked me why, despite having excellent grades and aptitude and skills in languages and stuff, why would you go to craftsmanship? Like, do you have any trouble with your family? Do you need money? Do you need a work whatsoever? I was like, no, I think it's interesting and I want to learn a real work, right? I want to learn real skills, not just talking a language and sitting on the university listening to people. That does not give any job, any skills in life. But I remember his shocked face because it was so far from what he learned would be life. And I found exactly the same in craftsmen in Japan. Most of them, they were aging, they're still aging, but they discouraged their own children to take after them. I mean, in the 80s, it was all about the bubble in Japan and like the way of life going up and up and up, having so many products made in China, made in Japan, made in USA that had import for everything, and the demand for craftsmanship, especially daily life craftsmanship. I'm not talking about fine craftsmanship, but just daily life, what we call minge here, just really, really went down. And so the craftsmen were just struggling, trying to sell their arts, trying to sell their craftsmanship, their skills. And who would want for their own kids to struggle with life? No one. No matter how long the tradition is, you want your kids to be happy. And if the economical model is about being a salaryman and working on a 9 to 5 job, which probably a 9 to 9 job in Japan, I mean, this is what you wish for your children. So most of them send their children to the best universities they could, and then wishes them to have this like salary based job they couldn't have. And this created a huge gap because now those people are 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, and there's nobody who they after that they didn't take the time to take an apprentice and teach them for the 10 or 15 years of time that is needed to become a craftsman. And so a lot of things are now going down, not because people don't need craftsmanship, but because that's not true. There are still places that do need craftsmanship. There's still places that are valuing handmade work. But because there's a huge age gap between the people who can teach and the people who are willing to learn, there's such a generation gap that they don't get along. And a few craftsmen that I know that are close to 90, they told me, we tried to take a few apprentices, 10 or 15 years ago, but it didn't go well because they don't know how to interact together. The generational gap is too big, culturally speaking, the way of thinking, the way of working. I see that a lot in, old corporate jobs that are trying now to hire Gen Z, and it just doesn't work. Because Gen Z have a very peculiar way of seeing work, and when they want to leave work, when they go on vacation, that they put their life first, and then the boomers or the Gen Y are like, no, job is everything. It must be priority number one. It just doesn't work, and and I see exactly the same happening at the craftsmen. And I used to work a lot with, and I still do that, work with local government to try to develop tours and activities to do in lesser known areas. And that involves a lot of craftsmanship discoveries and, and making experience and activities with craftsmen. And I really enjoyed doing that work of creating, coaching them to get them to approve, trying new things and stuff. And at the end, the tour that I made so many hours creating, so many people to talk to, I had no one to guide it. Because in Japan, there's a very big shortage of foreigners. Everybody says, yes, there's so many foreigners, blah, blah, blah. No, people living in Japan are available to do guiding. It's complicated because to be a guide, you need a certain type of visa, and that will allow you to be free, to work when you can, not working when you can't. And the working visas in Japan are very difficult to have because you have to have a very stable incomes. So being a guide cannot be your only activity to get a working visa in Japan. And so there's only 2 visas that can actually give you the job of a guide. Is the one spouse visa. It means that you're married to a national in Japan. And the second one is a permanent visa, which is basically the green card in the US, because they don't care. Once you have the permanent visa, they don't really care how much you earn every year. But for any other work visa, you have a minimum amount that you have to guarantee getting every year, so you keep your visa. And that's not really possible with a work as a guide, unless you are a very well-known guide or like work for like big company and have a stable income all year long. So the shortage is real, and Japanese people speaking English is also not that much, and they all do a lot of job. Not everybody wants to be a guide. It doesn't suit everyone. And even within the people who want to be guide, some people are not really great storytellers. They're very good at history. They know lots and lots of things, but being a guide means that you need to be able to be good at explaining. Leverage to the knowledge of your clients. Some of them are very good, understand very quick, and some of them just have the basics, and you have to start from very basics information. You cannot say everything in one day. So being able to tell a story, make things interesting, fun, you know, uh, is not for everyone. And I reckon people who did a lot of D&D and stuff are usually good at telling stories, which is my case. And so that's why after 3 years of creating contents and always seeing them, we have the tour, but we don't have the guy to do it. It was so frustrating that I decided to go independent. At that time, I just got engaged to my husband, and I decided to go independent and build up my own company and do those guide tours. And so I'm working now with the craftsmen that I discovered 5 or 6 years ago, which I created tour with. They were frustrated that we did such a good job and we couldn't sell it. Now I sell them. So that's how it started. But yes, I got the spouse visa, and that's how I could start my work as a guide. Otherwise, it would have been impossible.
So I guess what you're saying is that in this particular field, storytelling is more important
Then
than
facts.
than the craft itself to a certain extent, because what you're saying maybe is the why. Why is somebody doing this?
Yeah.
Therefore, well, the story can help someone understand why.
Yes. Yes, of course. But when you have a 5-year old child who asks you why, because there's not an answer. It doesn't work. It will never work. And so that's the way it is. It's not will never be an answer to anything. And so the questions that my clients have about something, I had them first. And that's why, I went to look for those answers. And that's why I can help them discover the answer to what they say. But actually, yes, storytelling is so important. It's about putting intention in words, it's about acting, playing, it's about interacting with your clients. It's not a monologue like I'm doing now. It's a lot more, catchball type of thing, having some quizzes and trying to challenge people to what they know already, linking things to what they know already, because the human brain is made such as it's a lot easier to handle an information if it connects to something you already know. So it's about making bridges so the information comes the right way. And English or Japanese not being my mother tongue, I also had to learn how to explain what I want to say, even if I don't have the right word to explain it, because sometimes you don't have the vocabulary to say what you want to say. And so being able to adapt to the people in front of you, to their level of understanding, to their cultural background, to their IQ sometimes, because I have clients that are so high functioning that it's, even for me, it's difficult to follow. This really helps. When someone asks you a question, don't answer the question. Try to think why they ask the question, and it will give you the direction to follow to go to the answer that I want to hear. Maybe I'm a little bit ADHD, maybe a lot.
I think storytelling is a bit like glue. It isn't it in a certain
Yes. Oh, I love this image. Very good one.
because the reason I think it is because particularly in what we think of today as advanced culture, people who live in big cities. I think one thing that comes up in the UK from time to time is that um, we're now further and further away from how our ancestors
Mm.
used to live.
Mm.
Where where does
True.
our where does our food come from? How did we build our houses? How did we, we take so many things um, for granted.
Yes.
There's a YouTube channel I watch, and one of the first things this man always says, "I'm okay, folks. I've got my coffee." you know,
Yeah,
and it's
that's the.
instant coffee, right? And
It's a
that's
Swiss invention, just in case you didn't know. Switzerland invented this. Anyway, continue, please.
I think the reason storytelling is therefore important is because there's this huge gap
Yeah.
uh, between how lots of people live today, and I think and their expectations. We live. I remember moving from one area to another, and then going back to the original place 6 months later and noticing a difference in speed. I had slowed down a little. They were still running around like ants
Mm,
as fast as they could. And I was thinking, well, they're missing stuff. I'm just sitting here watching them rush around. And I thought,
mm.
was I one of them 6 months ago?
Probably.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's so when people come for a trip or they come and they say, "Oh, look, Julie's doing these tours." They have to slow down, or you have to meet halfway, I suppose, don't you? They're kind of like, "Oh,
What
what?"
I'm very lucky about is that 95% of my clients actually come from following me on social medias.
Hmm.
And first, they notice that I'm crazy. Uh, Second, they know that I do also have chronic anxiety because that's not a taboo for me. That's something I talk about a lot on my social media, and want to spread the word that you can have mental illness and still build a company and have a successful life. But sometimes I need to completely slow down. So I talk a lot about all those subjects, and so I am lucky enough to have people still willing to meet me after knowing that. So uh, I don't really have so much demands for like marathon type tours. Most of my clients are people who come in Japan for a long time or who've been coming there, who came to Japan a few times already, who have come to Japan a few times already. Um, so they're not in the speed mode. And what I try to do in that day is they come and spend a day with a friend who know the area. So we're going to be very friendly. We're going to meet a lot of people. We're going to talk to a lot of people, local people, discover a little bit of everything, and just enjoy the life. Because that's the thing that I want to show around my tours. I show craftsmanship. As you said earlier, craftsmanship is not the goal, is to know the person, know the why. Why does this person do this? Why does he do this here? And why here is the right place to see that? So I try to link everything so everything makes sense, as if they were living in the area, and at some point you have so much information it just connects everything. So I don't really have marathon, people who want to visit so many places in one day. And whenever I have this type of demands, I redirect them to my friends that are doing this type of tours.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very lucky to have people who choose me rather than choosing the tours. It's just the tours that I offer meet their needs in terms of sustainable mindset, in terms of meaningful experience, in terms of doing something that is really going to change the face of their travel and create memories that they would probably not be able to create by themselves. I'm very, very grateful for all the people who have trusted me so far, the one who are trusting me this year, and the people that I'm gonna meet again, you know, in the next few years. Because those all the interactions are so interesting. And I sometimes have people who are a lot more knowledgeable about the craftsmanship than I am. When I have ceramists or specialists of wood crafts coming to see me in Japan and coming to meet their craftsmen, I'm sometimes, I translate everything. I don't really know what I'm translating, but the craftsmen and the clients, they understand each other, and I'm fine with it. And I was like, oh, he said this, this, and that. Does that make sense for you? It's like, oh yes, I understand very well. Okay, good. Great. Yeah.
So
So the people is more important than the craftsmanship, even if we learn a lot about it, obviously.
yeah, well, it shows, doesn't it? I mean, the craftsmen are obviously passionate about their
Yes.
that they do. So if you find people that match those interests, then as you say, you can almost lead them to it.
Oh yes, I do that a lot actually during the tours, depending on the skills. And sometimes I do have a few clients that speak a few words of Japanese, or a craftsman that speak a few words of English. I would pretend to go outside to take pictures, or like I would pretend to go in a boutique to help with the selling of objects, to leave my clients with the craftsman alone after spending 1 or 2 hours with them. And the conversation doesn't stop because I'm not there. It usually continues without me. And for me, that's the beauty of, even if the people don't really speak the same language, they're interested in the same thing. And that's like passion is linking them, passion is the bridge. And it's really, really always very fun for me to just, watch like this. Oh, they seem to get along very well. So I might spend 10 more minutes pretending to take pictures or pretending to sell things in the shop for visitors, just so the customer, the clients just have this one-on-one time without me involved with the craftsman, which is the peak of their experience. And still they are able to communicate even if they don't speak the same language. They can. The craftsman is feel at ease because they know I'm not very far away. They trust me, they trust my client, and if there's something, I'll take responsibility for anything that happened. And the client has been spent usually half of the day with me already. I give them anything that they need to know to interact with the craftsmen. They have the basics, and showing them that actually words is just a tool. Language is only a tool to communicate better, but there's so many other ways to communicate. So many, especially
Well,
in craftsmanship, when you can always show things instead of saying them.
yeah. Well, they do say words are maybe 7 or 8% of communication. A craftsman may enjoy someone enjoying what they do, and it's like a coin you can flip over.
Yeah.
Uh, Someone who admires someone else's craft, it's
Yes. It's
no,
about creating this meaningful connection that allow people to really feel the moment, really feel the preciousness of being there, having traveling half the world to be there with that craftsman right now and have this very special moment. Usually I try to have, some tea time or like lunchtime with the craftsmen, take like coming with us after, so they can have this whole human interaction as well. The man without the craft, just the person. I say the man because, 90% of them are male, but I do have a few females as well. I have a few women working. But yes, it's just about discovering the person, because for me, that's what makes the crafts interesting. And decide and realize there's something about making ceramics, and some of them are like certified Japanese crafts, so you have like very like specific techniques that are certified. But even within that, within this frame, you will find the specialty, like the character of the craftsman showing through. And this is about learning what makes it special. And something I really am proud about is that my tours are not cheap. They're not crazy expensive, but they're not cheap, because we have like a fully hand tailor-made tour each time, a whole day with everything included. But what I love the most is when the clients arrive in the boutique or in a workshop for the first time, they see the price of the objects and things that's fucking crazy expensive. And after 2 or 3 hours talking with the craftsman, they hate the idea of going back without purchasing something made from the hand of that person. And so, depending on their means, they will choose some very small objects or a bigger one, but they feel it is important to buy something from that person because it's a way of saying thank you for taking the time to explain to me. It's a way of encouraging them in their craft. And that's how I know that I did my work well. If the client purchased something else in the craftsman shop, I think I did a great job. If they don't do it, just look happy, I'm happy. But to me, that's not enough. It's like, encouraging somehow further.
It's almost like the personality, the personality of the people crafting, um, they leave something behind. That
Especially in a world when we do have everything made on demand, on order, on Amazon or anything. You don't care about who made this. You don't care who touched your mouth or your earphones or even the stuff that are on my wall behind me. I mean, it's completely out of person. There's no humanity going on. And when you look behind, actually humanity also left the chat, because most of the time it's really bad working condition. But what makes the difference between craftsmanship, because in craftsmanship you have the word man, and that is what makes the difference between something that has been produced in millions of exemplars and something that is unique. Because even if the craftsman only does this special type of teapots, each of them will really really be different, and each of them will be one moment of time in the life of that person, and it shows, and you can remember it just by seeing that object. You remember the person behind, and that makes the relationship with the object so different. I have something like 50 kimonos at home, and I wear kimonos a lot. I remember for each of them where I found them secondhand, or who gave it to me in which circumstances, and that changes everything in the way you wear them.
mm, absolutely. So I noticed that the people you work with are in three distinct areas, and they're they each of these areas actually border one another. So, is there a particular reason why you only worked in a particular area, or is that just it's convenient if they're all adjacent to one another?
So I live in Aichi Prefecture, which is famous for Nagoya City and Toyota City. It's in the middle of Japan, so halfway between Kyoto and Tokyo. It's not a very popular area for tourism, but I live there because, I don't know, my life and circumstances made me live here, and now I'm a specialist of the area, and I'm the only one, so I can earn a little bit more. Uh, but I discovered that Aichi Prefecture is actually a very big center for minor craft manufacturing and craftsmanship in Japan, because of history, because of location, very conveniently located in Japan. And so I decided to start my business here, despite everybody telling me you should go to Kyoto and Tokyo because there are more people, there are more clients, more craftsmen and such. And that's true. But there's also a lot more concurrence. And if it's not me, it could be anyone else. And being in Aichi Prefecture, when there are so many craftsmen, but they're totally forgotten, they're totally living unknown. And I think for me, those are the ones who need the most help. Kyoto and Tokyo, there are so many ways on getting, to be known or be discovered, or like you have coincidences happen more in Kyoto and Tokyo of someone walking, randomly through the streets and find your workshop. But in Nagoya, there's almost no changes to this happen. And this is how I thought, okay, I have something to do here. But then, not only Nagoya, but Mie Prefecture, Gifu area, Nagano area are exactly the same. We divide them into prefecture for like administrative problems, but in terms of culture and history, the borders doesn't really matter at all. So you will find similarities or cultural differences without any correlation to the where the borders are. So for me, it's much more about the area, and it is about 3 or 4 prefectures in Japan. But it does make sense because all of them are connected historically speaking and culturally speaking. And so when I explain things to my clients, when I tell, why are you here, why you need to be here today, and what we're going to do here today, it's a lot more about geographic explanations, a lot more historic explanation and cultural explanation. Administrative doesn't matter in that sense. Now, I don't really go to Tokyo or Kyoto because I have a problem with crowds. I really don't like crowded places so much that I don't even do tours on Saturday and Sunday, even in Nagoya. I decided not to work on Saturday and Sunday for two reasons. The first one is I don't like crowds. And working on Saturdays and Sundays means that I have to take reservation a lot in advance for the restaurants and such, and my clients will not be able to enjoy the places at their fullest because they will have to share the space with people. If I bring them somewhere between Monday and Friday, then we'll have beautiful sceneries, a lot less people. And so the quality of my service will be a lot higher because I will be able to concentrate on my clients and not concentrate on not hurting or bumping into someone. And the second thing is, I want to see craftsmen at work. And craftsmen also work from that Monday to Friday, and usually Saturdays and Sunday, depending on the areas, those are their selling day. They're open for people to just come in the shop and buy. But I want to see them at work. I want to see them outside of taking calls and just making sales and such. So for me, it's a lot more interesting to book them in week time. Obviously, I pay them good, so they are willing to take a full afternoon for us. It's more interesting for them to take an afternoon with me than just continue working. This way, I ensure that everybody's happy, that they are willing to do this as well, and that they give the best experience to my client, and that I also don't bother them if they're busy, because I never guarantee a tour to a client. I tell them, you're interested in this, I think this will be good for you. If they tell me yes, okay, let me call the craftsman. And if the craftsman is not available, I'll never insist, because before being available for my tours and making activity, they're craftsmen, they have a work, and sometimes they have an exhibition coming on, or they have a big order, a big demand for their stuff, and they need to concentrate on their work. And I don't want to force them on putting a break on what they need to get done just for the sake of my client coming in. So me introducing clients is a way of just getting them a little bit more exposure, getting them a sense of like interacting with people, eventually getting them to learn a new language, because I had some of them learning English since I'm working with them, and they enjoy it a lot since they have an output now. But at the same time, my goal is for them to just thrive doing their art, doing their crafts. So their crafts and what they really want to do will always be more important than my reservations and my bookings. That's something I really want to make sure that they understand. And I think the one who works with me like that I understand that.
Well, it's good to build up that kind of relationship with them. Now, in terms of travel in general, then, would you agree that there are hidden gems, and does this have a parallel with what you're currently organizing? Do you think the craft are hidden from general view?
Yes and no. Yes, because most of the places where I go are usually not open to public. And and so if you don't have me with you, then you can't visit those places. That's the thing that I pride myself on giving to my class customers, or people who trust me. And so yes, in the sense that I voluntarily choose places that need to be hidden. So I want to give this like feeling of opening, the treasure box to my clients. But at the same time, I also want those places to be more known in the future. And that's why I'm sharing that on social media as well, with the consent of the craftsman, of course. So I think a hidden gem is not really hidden, because if it's a gem, it means that someone has discovered it already. It's just like, it's just about the level of knowledge about the place. So it's a hidden gem if only 3 people know it. If 100 people know it, it's not a hidden gem anymore. It's a gem, but it's not hidden. So it's really a matter of what you project on the place and the access that you want to give. And as an influencer, I'm a micro influencer. I'm very active on Instagram and TikTok. Um, you always have to keep in mind that what you share could explode, could buzz, and what was an hidden gem 1 year ago is suddenly not anymore. And in Japan, in the past years, we have seen a lot of changes due to social medias, and places that used to be so quiet are now so crowded. But at the same time, a hidden gem, it depends on how you share it, right? If you keep it for yourself, it's very good, but then is it beneficial to the gem itself? So I think it's all a matter of, not everything is black and white, and hidden gems are important for tourism dispatching. In Japan right now, we have a big problem, like a lot of countries in the world, of mass tourism, because Japan right now is the trendy destination since 2 years ago. We are a very trendy destination. It's eventually will come to pass. It's cycles. But right now, Japan, everybody wants to go to Japan. And I understand very well why, and you should come to Japan. But because it's a life-changing experience. Um, but the problem is, if everybody wants to see exactly the same thing, then the places will be crowded anyways. But at the same time, when you go to some place for the first time, as we were saying earlier, there's no way you can find the time to find the hidden gems. You don't have time for that. There's a few things that you need to do. You go to New York for the first time, you're gonna see the Empire State Building, you're gonna see Broadway, you're gonna see, like the Bronx or the Statue of Liberty or whatsoever. There are things that you need to tick box, right? So, and it's impossible to say to people, go to Paris, but don't go to Eiffel Tower, don't go to Notre Dame, don't go to the Arc de Triomphe. Just, go
Don't
to
be
this
please.
whatsoever, and nobody knows stuff. Just get lost in the city where there's nothing. No way, right? Not spending money for this at your first trip.
Hmm.
So, our work in the travel industry, in the tourism industry, is to offer opportunities and get to people to know why it is interesting for them. And we have what we call specific interest tourism, so SITs. Um, and that's the thing, that anyone that's traveling to a destination has a different interest in that destination. And even if you need to tick boxes of, the things that you absolutely need to do in Tokyo, then you might have 1 or 2 days where you don't know what to do. And in those 2 days, then choose something that appeals to your very specific interest, whether it is going to see a sumo wrestling match, whether it is going to an anime store, whether it is to, enjoy a tea ceremony, or just go to a park whatsoever. But do something that appeals to you within your destination. For example, I'm a horse rider. I used to horse ride a lot in France. And now, wherever I go somewhere, I try to find an ethical place to horse ride. That's my specific interest. The thing with specific interest is people are willing to spend a lot more money for something that really do appeal to their interest, rather than something that is basic that everybody does. And specific interest tourism then have a lot more economical good impacts on the area that is concerned, or on the um, field that is concerned by the specific interest. So my goal within craftsmanship is to catch the interests of people who want to know more about human, who want to know more about craftsmanship, who want to know more about sustainable lifestyle, or handmade stuff. But it might not be interesting or appealing for everyone. And for that, you will need guys that are specialized in a lot of different things all around Japan. And you need to advertise for a lot of local gems in a way that it will appeal to people who are, keen on discovering that specific color of gem.
Yes, you have to have your radar antenna active to spot those people looking for those specific interests.
Yes. And also, have my own color of emitting signal so that people can find me in the dark.
Yeah,
That's my
absolutely.
social medias.
Now, we've mentioned food, and food is important in Japan. You've mentioned
Yes.
getting into restaurants. So, are you personally interested in Japanese cuisine? And if so, what
I
kind?
am French, and French people are walking stomachs, right? They only think about with their stomachs. Be with French people for one day, and you real notice that after finishing eating, the only thing they think about is the next lunch. French people are basically hobbits, right? They eat all day, and for French people, that's true, but that's also true for most of the people visiting Japan. When you ask people what are the things that are the most eager to discover in Japan, usually foods come first. um, and that's because it is so different, but also so accessible. It's easy to understand what a noodle soup could be. It's easy to understand what a fried cutlet could be. It's easy to understand what the sushi is, thanks to the culture of sushi spread all around Europe. I mean, I think it's much more complicated to discover Vietnamese food, or I don't know, maybe Taiwanese food, or I don't know, maybe more smaller country, or like African. I mean, African food doesn't exist, but like smaller country in Africa, where the spices, the way of cooking is so different that you don't even know what you're eating. In Japan, there's still a base. I wouldn't say that all food in Japan is that way, but there's a base of things that is easy to comprehend. The takoyaki, the okonomiyaki, those are made from flour, and like squid, or fishes that we also have, like tuna or salmon, fishes that also have out in Europe as well. So even if the combination of tastes is a little different, those are easy to understand, comprehend for most of the people. And onigiri, like the rice bowl, is also very specific, but it feels good with the tastes of European people. They can really comprehend the taste really easily. When you go into more traditional or local food, it might be a lot different, um, you know. But when you come to the basic of everyday food in Japan, it's very easy to understand, and we are open to that sense, to the sushi culture, really spreading out everywhere. So people have an image of what Japanese food could be, and there's so many different things that you can enjoy without knowing so much about the Japanese culture throughout 10 days or 12 days of a trip to Japan. As for people who live there for a long time, I would say the challenge is a lot different, because at some point, cheese, bread, salt, it is, you start missing them. The fish uh, broth culture can sometimes be overwhelming for a lot of people. I understand that. But yeah, Japanese people like food. They're obsessed with food. And European people, most of them are too. I mean, talk to Italian people, or talk to French, or talk to not English people, sorry, but not sorry. But talk to Spanish people, they all love food, and they have a very strong um, bond with food. It's not just something that you put in your mouth, it's something that is social. And
Yeah,
Japan is a lot like this, I would say.
and probably is it the same with tea drinking?
Yes, and that goes well with British people, isn't it?
Yes, well, it's funny that we should like tea, but we don't grow any
That's
ourselves.
true. That's true. History is fascinating.
It is always fascinating.
We do have in Europe a lot of plant infusions, right? A lot of infusions, not tea, but a lot of infusions, herbal teas and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, no, no, that is very popular. So, is it true that there's a lot of variety in both food and tea, and probably across the whole range, depending on where you are in Japan at any given moment. Would you say there's a lot of variety between the different
Would
regions?
you say there's a lot of variety in French wines or French cheese?
Well, 100%. I wouldn't
Right? It's the
expect
same in Japan.
less.
People love to put labels on stuff. And so they will just change one ingredient and declare this is their new local specialty that is different from the specialty from next town because they added an egg on top or because they added like this curry flavor to it, but basically the base is exactly the same. So people are gonna dislike me for this, but yes, the tea will have different name just because it was grown in a different valley, next valley, but it's the same plant. Or black tea, and green tea are exactly the same plant. It's just not made the same way. And in green tea, you also have the matcha tea, which is still the same plant, but they just don't take exactly the same leaves. So it's very interesting when you get to know about this because same for rice. They do have 100 different type of rice. And my husband is always angry at me because I don't see the difference. But yes, so depending on where it is, we do have a lot of differences, and there are sommeliers for tea as well in Japan. I think outside in the world is something that is spreading as well. So there's a lot of variety, and people are very proud of their local specialty that is so different from the next valley. But from someone that doesn't know, it just looks exactly the same. The taste is exactly the same. If you don't know the difference, just, oh yes, okay, oh good, it's tasty. But what is so different from people around? And people were like, it's so different. Like, oh yeah, fair enough. Why not? So it's a lot about people love to put labels on things. And I think that's not just the Japanese people. I think it's a human things. We are so different from the next village. But from a traveler's point of view, it looks similar.
Yeah. No, well, they do say variety is a spice of life, and maybe that's what we experience to a certain degree.
And a thing that I'm thinking right now is also Japan is a very long yet very thin country that spreads across several latitudes, different latitudes. And so from the very north of Japan, that is at probably the same height as Portugal or South France, to the South Japan, the southern islands in Japan that are very close to the equator, it means that we do have a very wide range of climates and such a very wide range of local specialties and local fruits and vegetables growing. So that also maybe adds a lot to this cultural specificities and the pride of each regions, because you can be Japanese and come from such different parts of the country. Even in England, that should be the same. Probably the same in Norway or Sweden, because North and South are so apart from each other that there's no way that the culture or the food could be the same.
I think that does happen a lot. But I'd like to challenge you now.
Okay.
Um, you've lived in Japan for almost 10 years straight. Do you have a favorite region that you're willing to say yes?
Yes, I do. I do love the region around Aso Mountain, Aso volcano in Kyushu area. Kyushu is one of the first main islands in Japan, and that's the island that's the most southern of Japan. And there is a volcano that is still active. It's called Mount Aso, and this volcano is blessed with a very, very wide caldera, which is um, you have the volcano, and then you have a like a basin around with cliffs on the side. And this area is so green, and they have developed a very, very peculiar way of farming the land by burning everything once a year. Um, the food is delicious, the climate is incredible, the nature is stunning, and that's really an area where I really fell in love many times. And that's also an area where my favorite horse riding ranch is. So sometimes every 2 or 4 years, 2 to 4 years, I pay myself tickets there, rent a car, drive all the way there just to ride horse, because I found there a place where we do have the same ethical standards. So I really do love this area. And the second area that I love the most in Japan is in the Nagano prefecture, Nagano Mountains. So Nagano is a prefecture that is in the middle of Japan. It's in on the Japanese Alps, so a very, very big mountain range. And Nagano is very famous for the Nagano winter ski sports, right? It was pretty much many years ago. But right there, there's a small area near a town called Kiso. And this area is a plateau that's called Kaida Kogen. Same, very, very specific area, very green. There's very high snow in winter and very green summers. And there again, I told you I'm a horse girl. There's a center for preservation of one of the endemic races of horse in Japan that's called the Kiso horse. It's a small horse that used to be the horse for the samurais. Very, very sturdy, very strong despite its small size and very big belly. Super, super cute. And there's a preservation center for this endemic species of horses that comes from Japan. And I love this area for the whole, I don't know, scenery. It's so peaceful. You forget everything when you go to Caldera of Mount Aso or Kaida Kogen, those places full of nature. I love them. Really, really, really deep.
And mountainous regions tend to be very good for well, breathing, aren't they? Because
Yes, breathing. A lot of people get there to hike, actually. Um, Very clear waters, good for fishing. And people in those areas, I mean, I wouldn't say that area around Aso is remote, but in Kaida Kogen you can say it's a remote area. And so I mean, the hospitality hits different if you take your energy and your time to get there. People really are, treating you a little bit different. And so I love those places a lot. I thought about moving on those areas a lot, but my husband, he's a city boy. He will never go further than 6 kilometers away from his parents. It's fine.
it sounds like you've forgiven him.
Yeah, I mean, we have a house, I have a garden, I have many plants, and it's basically, spreading out without him noticing also. So yeah.
And well, I'd just like to finish up then by just asking you about your feelings on tourism generally. Now, clearly, a lot of people are traveling uh, about now, and as you say, Japan is currently a popular must go to destination. In terms of people getting into Japan and traveling around Japan, do you see things that are working well and things that are not working so well?
Yeah. I would say the most important thing is to prepare your trip. If you want to have something that is different, you need to prepare. Why is that? Is because if you don't prepare, you will only have access to what is written in English. And the only thing that are written in English are things that everybody goes to. So if you want to discover something different, if you want to adapt your trip to your specific interest, or if you want to adapt to your specific needs, that's something you're going to prepare in advance. Like if you're vegan, or if you have some disability of some sort, or if you have some preference, or like you want to meet specific things. Japan is, I mean, out of the beaten tracks, Japan is not really something that you can discover if you are not prepared to, if you have not searched in advance and eventually book a few things. If you want to go without bookings and expect things to be in English, then you will only have access to what we call the golden route. which I call the prison route in Japan. And if that's fine by you, it's okay. But I would say if you want to experience Japan differently, take time, do your research, find things. Information is available right nowadays. There's a lot of influencers, there's a lot of blogs, there's a lot of people, sharing their own insight about Japan. But you need to research for those, because anything you can find, five best things to do in Osaka, is going to be the same five things like you will find everywhere. So find yourself before going, I don't know, a year in advance or 6 months in advance, one influencer or one blog that is close to what type of travels that you like, the type of things that you're interested in, and just save everything they say and try to book one or two to make your travel look like you. Try to personalize your travel as much as you can. And by doing so, you will be able to experience a level of Japan that you will never be able to experience without booking or without, trying to get out of your comfort zone. And usually when you go outside of what everybody's doing, to go to, even for one day, a very remote area to see something that's so deep, people there will be so welcoming. They will thank you for coming that far. They will thank you for having such a deep interest. And you will discover Japan that you will never be able to experience if you only stick to Tokyo, Osaka, or Kyoto, which are a good destination for a first trip. But just please think about 1 or 2 days just going out of it and explore something that's related to you and you alone, because Japan has it all, like any other country. If you like chess, you can probably try to have a chess board game with a Japanese person. You don't even need to speak the same language, right? If you like flowers or English gardens, you can find English gardens in Japan. How are they different from English gardens in England? If you like, I don't know, like there's sky is the limit. Just try to find something that connects with some very specific interest of yours, and I'm sure that your travel will be so much different. And if you can't do it by yourself, there's a lot of guides that are willing to take you there.
Mm. Well, that's good advice. And one last thing then is there one thing about traveling to Japan that you would change?
I wish plane was not the only way to come to Japan. I wish there was, let's say, a train or a bridge with a train that would, change the destination to something a little bit more green. um, there are a lot of cruising stuff, but I don't really like cruising ships. It's not anything greener than a plane. But I wish there were more train access. I don't know if they could build a whole bridge or tunnel like the English Channel or whatsoever. I don't think it's possible. But I wish it was more accessible in terms of transportation means, maybe. Yeah. Yes, because I think being more accessible, less expensive in terms of planes, or less expensive, or like expensive in terms of time as it takes to get there, will allow people to come more often, and will then allow people to explore more. Because most of the people who come in Japan, they will only come once in their lifetime. I mean, for Westerners, I so to speak, Asian tend to come many times because it's closer. So I wish Japan was not that far, so people will have the chance to explore it once or twice and deepen their knowledge all the time. Obviously, if people are going to visit one time only, they want to tick the boxes, and there's nothing wrong in that.
But that's the same with any destination that's a very long way away, isn't it?
Yes, yes, and I think any destinations that long far away suffers from the same thing. I would say probably people in Sydney and Brisbane are going the same way, or New Caledonia, or maybe New Zealand. Um, when it's far and it costs a lot, and there's a few things that you want to see because that's what convinced you to go to that destination, right? You're going to New Zealand, probably it's difficult to skip Hobbiton. I mean, for me, it would be difficult. Uh, but those are the things that made you want to go to that destination first and foremost. So now you're there. You've probably, paid a few thousand euros or pounds or dollars to be there. You spend 20 more hours to get there. There's a few things you want to do because that's what you wanted to see. That's what convinced you to come here originally. You're not going to, okay, it's there, but that's actually not what I want to see. You can only imagine what you know. So if you don't know about other things that are available there, you always go for what you know best because that's human. But you need to feel at ease with this before then you get adventurous and go out of the beaten path. Only when you feel at ease on the beaten path, you can maybe step aside and see what's wrong. Because if some things does not go well, you can always go back to the beaten path because that's secured. But when you're traveling, you cannot always be outside of the beaten path. That's very tiring, especially when you don't speak the language. You need somewhere to go back to. That's only human feeling safe somewhere. And that's why American, when they travel, they will always choose, the Hilton chains hotels. I don't understand, but I understand. After a day of exploring, there's no better feelings than going back to a place that you know where you feel safe.
Yes, people do. Yeah, someone else said that to me. People want to feel secure in
Mm.
some form or another.
Yeah. And a lot of things that my clients tell me is most of them travel solo or by two in Japan. And when they spend the day with me, they tell me, we were able to relax because you were so friendly that we felt that we were with someone that we knew for a long time. Because some of them have been following me on social media for many many years, and so they kind of feel that they know me, and spending the day with me, I am their anchor because they know they can ask me anything. I'll be the thinking brain for them. They can fully put their brain aside and just enjoy their day after many many days in a country where they don't understand a single thing happening around them. That's very tiring. And you don't have your friends or your partner, and then when you try to call them, there's the whole jet lag and stuff. So I do understand this feeling of being safe because I only travel to country where they do speak English or Japanese. When I go to Taiwan, a lot of elderly people speak Japanese, and that's a lifesaver for me.
Mm.
um, but so far, as long as much as I love travel, because I live because of people, I travel because of people. If I don't have someone that's gonna help me on the spot, I don't go. And that's the reason why, despite have been living in Japan for 10 years and Asia been so close, I've never been outside of um, Korea, South Korea, and Taiwan. Other destinations I'm very scared to go to because I don't know anyone there, and it makes me feel very very insecure if anything happened, what I'm gonna do.
But fortunately, the area you've chosen is wide and varied, and you will never feel bored there.
Yes, true. I mean, I want to travel to other countries, but I'm right now taking social media to look for people to meet there.
Absolutely. Well, Julie, it's been an absolute blast having a chat to you. I think
Thank you.
we've been true to our words. We've been chatting all over the place. I,
Yeah, sorry for
I,
that.
I'm surprised that your cats are not meowing as you.
My husband knows that I am, doing something right now, and there's a words on the door. Don't let the cat in. So probably he had fed them already, so they don't interfere. I have a real partner, someone that thinks without having me to need to say anything. So yeah, so that's probably why I don't hear any meow. Otherwise, it would have been a concerto.
They would have been determined.
Yes.
All right. Well, it's been really nice having a chat to you, Julie,
Thank you very much.
yeah, it's been fascinating hearing about your experiences, and good luck with that going
Thank you
forward.
for everyone. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest, and thank you for inviting me.